Here, you can improve your English with advanced, natural, and meaningful conversations. This episode is for C1 to C2 learners. Listen carefully to Sophia and Daniel. Notice the high-level vocabulary, follow the deeper ideas, and improve your fluency, pronunciation, and confidence step by step. Now, let's start the conversation.
Hi, I'm Sophia.
And I'm Daniel.
Today we are talking about the World Cup as more than football. Not merely as a tournament, not simply as 90 minutes on the pitch, but as a global ritual, a cultural spectacle, and one of the rare moments when millions of people seem to breathe with the same emotional rhythm.
Exactly. The World Cup is fascinating because it transforms football into something almost universal. For a few weeks, the game becomes a shared language. People who may never meet, who may not speak the same language, suddenly understand the same tension, the same silence, the same hope, and the same explosion of joy.
That is what makes it so powerful. A single ball can pull entire nations into the same emotional universe. Streets become louder, cafes become crowded, flags appear on balconies, and ordinary conversations suddenly turn into passionate arguments about tactics, players, pressure, destiny, and national pride.
And even people who proudly say, "I don't really watch football," somehow know who scored, who missed, who disappointed everyone, and which country is suddenly dreaming too loudly.
Exactly. The World Cup has a strange gravitational force. It attracts die-hard fans, casual viewers, children, grandparents, politicians, journalists, and people who only watch one match every 4 years, but still become emotional experts overnight.
And that tells us something important. The World Cup is not only about sport, it is about collective memory. People remember where they were when a legendary goal was scored, when a penalty was missed, when a team collapsed, or when an underdog refused to obey expectations.
Yes. Those moments become personal history. Someone might forget an ordinary week from years ago, but they remember the night their country won, the silence after elimination, or the exact second when hope suddenly returned.
Football becomes an archive of emotion. It stores joy, humiliation, nostalgia, disbelief, pride, resentment, relief, and sometimes even grief. A match is temporary, but the memory can become permanent.
I like that phrase, an archive of emotion. Because during the World Cup, people are not only watching athletes compete, they are watching stories unfold in real time.
And those stories are unpredictable. That is the beauty of it. Unlike cinema or theatre, the ending has not been written. Nobody knows whether the match will become heroic, tragic, absurd, controversial, or unforgettable.
That uncertainty is addictive. A team can dominate possession and still lose. A superstar can disappear. A substitute can become immortal. A goalkeeper can become a national hero. A single mistake can rewrite an entire country's mood.
That is why the World Cup feels bigger than football. The rules of the game are simple, but the meanings around it are extraordinarily complex.
It is sport, yes, but it is also theatre, psychology, culture, memory, identity, pressure, and collective imagination.
And maybe that is why we keep returning to it. Not only to see who wins, but to feel part of something larger than ourselves.
There is also something almost ceremonial about it. People gather at the same time, wear the same colors, sing the same songs, and experience the same emotional rise and fall together.
Yes, it becomes a modern ceremony. Instead of everyone sitting alone with their private concerns, the World Cup briefly pulls people into a shared public emotion.
And that is rare now. In a world that often feels fragmented, distracted, and divided, the World Cup creates a temporary sense of togetherness.
Even if that togetherness is imperfect, it still matters. For a few weeks, people feel that their individual lives are connected to a much larger story.
And that larger story is not only written by the champions, it is written by every unexpected goal, every emotional anthem, every shocked crowd, every tearful supporter, and every country that dares to believe.
Exactly. The World Cup is not just a competition between teams. It is a worldwide theatre of hope.
Daniel, why do you think national teams create such intense emotions? Club football can be incredibly passionate, of course, but the World Cup seems to touch something deeper.
I think national teams carry symbolic weight. A shirt is not merely fabric, a flag is not merely colour, an anthem is not merely music. During the World Cup, these symbols become emotionally charged. They represent belonging, ancestry, language, childhood, sacrifice, and sometimes even historical wounds.
That is true. When players wear the national shirt, they are not only representing themselves, they are carrying family expectations, regional pride, political tension, cultural memory, and the dreams of people who may feel invisible on the global stage.
And that is an enormous psychological burden. When a player steps forward to take a decisive penalty, he is not simply kicking a ball, he is standing inside a storm of expectation, surrounded by noise, judgment, hope, fear, and the invisible weight of millions of eyes.
We often romanticize pressure from a distance. We talk about mentality, courage, leadership, and composure, but inside that moment, the player is still human. His heartbeat accelerates, his breathing changes, his legs may feel heavy, his mind may become overcrowded.
Exactly. The World Cup exposes human vulnerability in the most public possible way. One goal can become personal mythology. One mistake can become national trauma. That is both magnificent and cruel.
It is cruel, because the public sometimes forgets that players are not symbols first. They are human beings first.
Yes, we turn them into heroes when they succeed and villains when they fail. But football is full of randomness, fatigue, anxiety, luck, and tiny margins. A ball can hit the post and decide how history remembers someone.
That is almost unfair, isn't it? A whole career can be reduced to one moment.
It can. The World Cup gives players immortality, but it can also imprison them inside a single image. A missed penalty, a red card, a mistake in the final minute, or a goal that changed everything.
And outside the stadium, people experience these moments almost physically. A missed chance can make an entire room collapse into silence. A last-minute goal can make strangers hug each other like family.
That is one of football's most extraordinary powers. It creates temporary intimacy between people who may have nothing else in common.
A student, a taxi driver, a grandmother, a shopkeeper, a child, a tired worker coming home late. For 90 minutes, they react to the same pass, the same tackle, the same impossible save.
In that sense, the World Cup creates a temporary community. It does not erase inequality, conflict, or social division, but it gives people a rare sensation of belonging.
But there is also a dangerous side. National pride can be beautiful, but it can become aggressive when people confuse love for their country with hatred toward another.
Exactly. The healthiest form of support is celebration, not hostility. Loving your team should not require dehumanizing the opponent.
That is the ideal version of the World Cup. Difference without hatred, rivalry without cruelty, passion without violence, and pride without arrogance.
And when it reaches that ideal, the World Cup becomes one of the most extraordinary cultural events on Earth. Not because everyone becomes the same, but because everyone brings their difference into one shared emotional space.
And maybe that is why the national anthem before a World Cup match feels so intense. It is not just a song before a game. It feels like a moment of emotional concentration.
Yes, the anthem gathers history into sound. For the players, it may bring back childhood dreams, family sacrifices, local streets, old coaches, and the first time they imagined wearing that shirt.
And for supporters, it can bring back memories of parents, grandparents, old tournaments, childhood summers, and the feeling of watching a match with people they love.
That is why a World Cup match is never just happening on the pitch. It is also happening inside memory, inside identity, and inside the imagination of millions.
But that emotional intensity needs responsibility. If football can unite people, it can also inflame them. If it can create belonging, it can also create exclusion.
Exactly. The World Cup asks us to hold two truths at once. Pride can be beautiful, and pride can be dangerous. Emotion can connect people, and emotion can blind them.
So maybe the real beauty of the World Cup is not only in supporting your own country, but also in recognizing the dignity of every other country.
Yes, the best supporters understand that the opponent is not an enemy. The opponent is part of the story.
Without the opponent, there is no drama.
And without respect, there is no real beauty.
Another reason the World Cup feels larger than football is the power of underdog stories. When a smaller nation challenges a football giant, the whole world seems to lean forward.
Absolutely. Underdog stories are emotionally irresistible because they disrupt hierarchy. They tell us that reputation is not destiny, money is not everything, and history can still be interrupted by courage, organization, resilience, and belief.
That is why neutral fans often support the smaller team. They see something universal in the struggle, the desire to be recognized, respected, and taken seriously.
The underdog represents possibility. It says, the world may be unequal, but the result is not predetermined. That idea is deeply powerful, especially in a tournament where one match can overturn years of assumption.
And for some countries, the World Cup gives visibility that politics, economics, or global media rarely provide. For a few weeks, the world learns their names, their colours, their songs, their players, and their emotional vocabulary.
That visibility matters. Football can become a form of cultural diplomacy. A national team can introduce a country to millions of people through courage, style, discipline, resilience, and collective emotion.
But at the same time, the World Cup is also a huge commercial machine. Sponsors, broadcasting rights, tourism, merchandise, digital campaigns, luxury advertising, stadium branding, everything around it becomes monetized.
Yes, it is definitely not a small neighborhood tournament anymore.
Not exactly.
But that contradiction makes the World Cup fascinating. It is both innocent and complicated. A child may watch the tournament with pure wonder, while behind the scenes there are branding strategies, political ambitions, corporate negotiations, and enormous financial structures.
So the World Cup reflects the modern world itself. Beauty and greed, unity and conflict, emotion and commerce, hope and spectacle.
Yes, it is not separate from society. It is a mirror of society. Its contradictions are our contradictions.
Maybe that is why it affects us so deeply. We are not only watching football, we are watching human beings search for meaning through competition.
And we are watching nations tell stories about themselves, who they were, who they are, and who they want to become.
So when we say the World Cup is more than football, we mean it is memory, identity, theatre, pressure, business, culture, politics, psychology, and collective emotion.
The ball is small, but the world around it is vast.
And for a few unforgettable weeks, millions of people speak the same emotional language.
A language of hope, tension, heartbreak, resilience, and celebration.
Football is the surface.
But underneath it, there is humanity.
And maybe that is the real magic of the World Cup. It reminds us that people do not only need entertainment. They need stories, rituals, heroes, surprises, shared memories, and moments that make life feel larger than ordinary time.
That is why the final whistle is never just the end of a match. Sometimes it is the beginning of a memory that a whole generation will carry.
And even when the tournament ends, something remains. A phrase, a goal, a celebration, a face in the crowd, a song in the street, or the feeling of watching history arrive unexpectedly.
Yes, the World Cup leaves emotional traces. It becomes part of how people remember a summer, a childhood, a friendship, a family gathering, or even a period in their country's history.
So maybe the question is not only who won the World Cup. Maybe the deeper question is, what did the World Cup make people feel?
Exactly, because football statistics can tell us the score, the possession, the shots, and the goals, but they cannot fully explain the trembling voice of a supporter, the silence after defeat, or the way a city erupts after victory.
Numbers record the match.
But emotion records the meaning.
That is why the World Cup cannot be reduced to tactics, money, or trophies. It contains all of those things, but it also exceeds them.
It is a global ceremony of uncertainty. Every match begins with possibility, every supporter begins with hope, and every nation, no matter how powerful or modest, enters the tournament carrying a story.
Some stories end in glory, some end in heartbreak, some end quietly. But all of them become part of the larger human drama.
And that is why the World Cup is more than football. It is one of the few events where the world watches itself feel.
The world watches itself hope.
The world watches itself remember.
And for a short time, the world feels connected through one game.
One game, countless stories.
One ball, an entire world of meaning. So, that was a deep conversation, Daniel. Today, we looked at the World Cup not only as a tournament, but as a global ritual full of memory, identity, pressure, pride, and human emotion.
Exactly. And I think that is why football can feel so powerful. It may begin with a ball, a pitch, and two teams, but very quickly it becomes a story about people, nations, dreams, and belonging.
So maybe the real question is not only who will win, but also what will this tournament make us remember?
Beautifully said. And in our next conversation, we will continue with another World Cup topic and explore the emotions, stories, and hidden meanings behind the game.
Thank you for listening.
See you in the next episode.
This episode was for C1 to C2 learners. Keep listening, repeat useful phrases, pay attention to advanced vocabulary, and try to use these expressions in your own conversations. The more you listen, the more natural your English will become. See you in the next episode.